afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Robbie Smith, the curator of the Natural History Museum at the Aquarium. I've come here to talk to you today about these rocks. This is called the Checkerboard Formation, and they're really peculiar rocks because they're quite old, around 200,000 years of age, and they've been formed differently than a lot of the other rocks in Bermuda. So let's have a look down here, and we're going to look at these rocks at the bottom here. They're kind of smooth, and you can see these really peculiar, long scratches and cracks that we have along here. And right on top of them, if you look this way a little bit, you can see some other rocks on top of these. And those are slightly younger rocks than these ones. But all these rocks were formed around 200,000 years ago. And what's really unusual about these rocks is they are all marine sediments. They came from the water. Lots of all the rocks in Bermuda do come from the water, but these are preserved in a way that is really unusual. So imagine you were walking off the beach in Horseshoe Bay and you stood in the water waist deep. The type of sand you would find under your feet would look just like this, nice and smooth, because it's always being moved by the ocean. At the back of Horseshoe Bay, before you get to all the trees that make the vegetation, you're going to have back beach sediments, things that have been moved from the beginning part of the beach where the water is by storms up into the back. So how do we know they're marine sediments? Why am I concluding that? Well, let's have a quick look at something that will tell us why these are marine sediments. Explain why we think these are all marine sediments, as opposed to different types of rocks that you might find at Khyber Pass or in other parts of Bermuda. And the reason we can tell that is because of fossils that are preserved in these rocks. So that sand in Horseshoe Bay has some shells in it, and I'm going to show you a fossil shell. I'm going to point right down here. Can't see a whole bunch of it, but that little white thing sticking out looks like a fingernail. It's part of a very common marine shell. So if you looked under a microscope or you poked around these rocks, you would probably find a few other shells that would tell you these are marine sediments. That's how we can conclude that these are those unusual rocks. Other parts of Bermuda are just formed from dunes that lay on top of other types of sediments like this. But these are exposed, we get to see them, and we get to try to help you understand why they're there. But let's go back and have a little think about what those unusual cracks are, because they're very unusual to find that type of formation on rocks. They look so regular, kind of like a checkerboard. That's why we got that name. So let's go over here and check this out. All right, so now I want to try to help you understand why we think these peculiar cracks are formed here. If we look down here, you can see some of the cracks running along the floor here. This is the rock that I was just talking about, the sort of marine subtidal sediments that you would find standing in the water off Horseshoe Bay or Elbow Beach or any other beach. But that crack actually continues and goes up right here. And you can see that it actually turns into sort of a V-shaped structure. And if you go the other way and look down at that crack and go along here, and you can see it comes up in this rock here. So we're going from the older rock on the bottom into the younger rock, and the crack comes up. There's actually another crack that runs this way. So the best explanation why these cracks would be on the bottom and in the top is those rocks were shaken by an earthquake, jiggling these rocks and forcing them to be breaking apart, but they'll break along very defined lines. So that's the easiest explanation to understand why we have these peculiar things. Just shaking these rocks, whether they happened all at once or maybe it happened at different times, and some rocks were created sometime and some rocks were created later, we don't really know. Once those cracks are opened up, then you get to really see what happens after that. And right over here, you can have a look right here where a crack was formed and it opens up. There's nothing in there. So over time, sand trickles in and fills that up, and then it gets cemented together. This older rock has eroded away, leaving behind this material that had filled in one of those cracks. So that tells you about the time and the timing of the changes that take place here at the Checkerboard. So I hope you enjoyed that story. We got some really cool rocks here, lots of other rock stories in Bermuda. My good colleague, Mark Rowe, Dr. Mark Rowe, really helped me understand what's been going on here. Thanks very much.